if you've decided to spend this hour with us, hopefully you're familiar with the faces that are up here. Obviously, Kevin Kelly, Matt Kyle, Nicole Zavolich, and a very, very special guest, a man who pretty much defines gaming in Boston, I would have to say, Ken Levine of Irrational Games. Ken, I was actually looking over your bio, and through the course of your career, you've had your finger in about every significant game that I love. Like System Shock, Thief, obviously BioShock. I mean, have you ever sort of looked back at your career and gone, wow, I did all that?
My first job in the industry, the first week I worked in the industry, I got put in a room with Doug Church. And for those Doug really is a guy who keeps himself very quiet and doesn't talk a lot, but a lot of times people think, System Shock and Ultima Underworld, that's a Doug Church. That was the brain behind those things. And then I got to work with him on Thief. So I'm like a really lucky guy. I think a lot of that has to do with the luck I had that I got put at this amazing company with these amazing people, and I just got to learn so much. So right from the very start, I was working on cool stuff because of the people I was working with.
Especially System Shock 2 and Thief. One game kind of really started to make people reconsider how you can approach an RPG. And Thief, there wasn't much stealth out there. There was Metal Gear Solid, I think.
Yeah.
And it is
Metal Gear.
Yeah, you're right. There was Metal Gear. There hadn't been Metal Gear Solid yet. It's kind of phenomenal, like the influence those games have had. And I guess BioShock, while being such a big game, I haven't seen it influence because I don't know if anyone knows how to do what you pulled off with that title.
Yeah, I think it's a weird mix of a lot of different things, and it's not something that you can sort of immediately, like a Farmville or something, where you can immediately take it and draw specific mechanics from, because the game's not really about the mechanics, it's about the world and the feel and the vibe, and that's harder to replicate, I think.
That's what your panel yesterday was about. I believe it was called From Background to Center Stage, Building Game Worlds as Main Characters. And I think even on the soapbox, I've actually talked about how the world of BioShock is pretty much the main character of that game. R.A. Salvatore, who's working at 38 Studios, in a recent interview I did with him, he said it was very important working on the Amalur games that it's a world that you care enough about that you want to save it, and how important that is. It sounds like that's a philosophy that you would also share.
Yeah, I think our approach to it is not from a story, like backstory standpoint. It's really important to us to put the story in the world. And I think that's what the panel was about yesterday. And I'm lucky I'm surrounded by these guys. Two of the guys on the panel I met, when I was working at Looking Glass, and Nate Wells and Sean Robertson. And I'm just surrounded by these amazing artists who can sort of help me take these story elements and translate them into visual elements. And I think that's what games have, what no other medium has, what books don't have, what movies don't have, is we can make a world that the player drives the experience on. That we just make this place and say, all right, here you go, go into it. And movies, books can't do that. As deep you can get in books, it's always with the author, and the authorial intent is always there. With the movie, you can do these incredible visuals and these beautiful people and these great performances, but it's locked into what you have. And games miss that opportunity, which is, I think, one of their best opportunities, is just to put you in a world and put a huge amount of detail in that world and let people just go into it. And I think we're lucky that we sort of figured out how to. Well, I think we did it. We saw the opportunity there, and we really had the time and the energy to expand that out and make our games about the worlds.
But speaking of movies, a lot of people probably don't know that Ken worked in the film industry as a writer for quite a while, and I recently found out what you did with one of your first big paychecks.
You mean the Sega Master System?
Yes.
Yep, that's right.
And the VHS, the cutting-edge technology of VHS.
I got my check. I just got out of college, and I got paid $60,000 for that movie, and I was like, oh my God, I'm set for life. And and I was living in San Francisco, and I went to an electronics store, and this was a long time ago, and I was like, oh my God, I have infinite money now. What should I do? And I walked in the store. I'm going to go to the store and buy everything I ever wanted. And I walked out with a VHS, a Sega Master System, and that light gun. I was like, yeah, I'm done.
What was the film? I want to know what the film was.
It was a film. Believe it or not, it was a rewrite for Paramount of a romantic comedy where they were trying to make Amy. Remember that Christian rock singer Amy Grant? Mm-hmm. They were trying to make her into a movie star, and it was a vehicle for her. And I wrote it, and it was terrible. And and I got fired. And
fired to the tune of $60,000.
Yeah, I kept the money though, which is good. They didn't take the money back, thank God.
Was the film ever made?
No, it was never.
Okay,
never made.
Next project.
All right. No IMDb. So you're on the developer side, and I think all four of us here can say that we go to PAX and we're just kind of on our feet, interviewing things, writing posts, stuff like that. You have an experience here that's from a much different perspective. You kind of stay in one place and things come to you. Is that a fair assessment of your experience at PAX, that you just wait for people like us to show up to interview you, or you go to a panel?
Well, the great thing about PAX is that usually at a show like E3 or something, I'm stuck in a room and I'm doing the same demo all day long. And we have that coming up. We had that when we first broke BioShock Infinite, and we're going to have probably 83 or something coming up soon. We'll be doing that again. But what I love about PAX is we weren't in our schedule of something where we wanted to show. We were ready to show a particular aspect of the game, but we're in Boston. We don't get to. We have this great community. We do these. We really. I think we put our money where our mouth is when we say we care about community. We do 2 podcasts specifically for our community. We support community with our website, and we have this chance to spend time with the community. And we wanted to do basically fan service at the show, because it's a show about fans. It's not a show about the buyer from Walmart.
That's such a good show, though.
Oh, it's a great show.
When you have to go to the buyer from Walmart show, it's really good.
No, because E3 is press and media and buyers from retailers. That's basically what it is. And not that there's anything wrong with press.
No, that's okay. That's okay.
But to have a show where we can just basically focus on fans and have a booth where they get their picture taken and give them stuff and have raffles, and we have a party for our fan community tonight, and our booth is manned by all our rational developers. We didn't hire, except for the woman playing Elizabeth, and her costume was actually made by Elizabeth's costume was made by my assistant Sarah Rosa.
Wow.
So she's a cosplayer and did a great job with that. But we really want it to be about the interaction between people in the studio and the fans. So the booth's manned by people in our studio, so they get to meet all the fans, and the party's staffed by people in the studio. We're going to have we have a bunch of board gamers in the studio, so that we're going to bring board games to the party tonight. We're going to play board games with the gamers, and whoever wins the board games. And it's just a great opportunity, because usually we just know people by their names in the forum, and PAX puts a face to that name, and that's why we love coming here. And the fact that it's in Boston just makes it all the better.
Matt, I'm about to say, just hearing this is making me think that I think, unlike other forms of entertainment, the consumers of games and the makers of games, their lives are probably far more similar in terms of interest than you would ever find with authors, with music, or with anything like that.
Yeah, that's true. I think actually Ken's an excellent example of that, because I remember interviewing you for the first time years ago. You probably don't remember, but it was after BioShock won a bunch of GDC awards. And I was like, oh wow, this guy's really intense and kind of scary, and he's he's serious all the time, and he tells these really really deep stories about objectivism and betrayal, and then I saw your PAX keynote in I think it was Seattle years ago, and it was like,
this guy's a moron.
I was like, this guy's a total nerd through and through, he's one of us. I didn't even get that. It was actually a very heartfelt speech. I thought it was something you probably wouldn't get from a Hollywood director to movie fans. It was like kind of this. He's been through the same things all nerds went through in high school and all that, and finding that kind of niche to exist in.
Well, we did when we were growing up, and guys who are like Adam's and I age.
Yes, you're right.
This kind of stuff just did not exist in any way, shape, or form. Well, the content wasn't there. There just wasn't the amount of movies and games and shows and things like that. It just wasn't there. There was no way to learn about it. There was no internet. There was no, when a comic book got canceled, heartbreaking,
No, you'd only really find out when a pattern emerged that it wasn't showing up.
You keep going back to the candy store, and it would just not show up. And this happened traumatically for me with my Logan's Run comic books. I was heartbroken. I kept going back and I'd have dreams about going to the store, looking for my Logan's Run comic, and finding the next issue, and it was not true. It never showed up. But the only way you knew about it is like a girl who breaks up with you just by never calling you again. There was no content, there was when nobody liked the stuff we liked.
Mm-hmm.
I used to play Dungeons and Dragons by myself in my in my basement.
Stay with me.
Wait, how do you play Dungeons and Dragons by yourself?
Very sadly.
Kevin, it is an experience unlike any other.
I can smell the shame right now.
D4.
What's around this bend? I have no idea.
That's right.
Did you cheat?
Of course, yeah. You got to have some advantage.
And you're sitting there, because I grew up in Berkeley, and there was Games of Berkeley. It was this great role-playing store, and I have all my special dice. I'd kind of put them out. There's more ceremony to setting it up before I was faced with the fact that I'm dungeon mastering myself.
That sounds perverted, even.
It's kind of like people who spend a night alone and put on the candles,
exactly,
and the music. But and then to see if I could have seen that whatever years from then, that not only would I get to make these things, but I'd be able to come to something like this and just be surrounded by people that I would have. I wish I knew so badly when I was younger. It's just such a great thing.
Well, also, back when we were young, being a nerd was a pejorative.
Absolutely.
It didn't have this incredible badge of honor. I mean, I am envious of many of you out there for the lives you get to lead. I mean, I had all these loves, but it was hidden. It was all in the closet. It was these quiet things I did. I didn't want my brother to even know because he might rat me out.
I remember bringing comic books to school to read at lunch because I didn't have any friends, and I'd sit there and this is getting really depressing.
Look at this. This is like talk therapy all of a sudden.
No, this is look how far we've come. This is look how far we've come.
No, and it's hard to understand because now being nerd is kind of cool. And in the last few years, because games have really come into the fore, it's not just acceptable; it's actually really aspirational. But when we were younger, guys our age, it was you had to hide it. It was really that bad, and people would make fun of you if you read comic books or you liked things. And I think the reason, and you probably felt the same way, Star Wars had such a monumental effect on the world because it was really the first time where it was exactly the thing that you dreamed in your head that somebody would make for you because it was a world that was so complete and it wasn't like half-assed in any way, and there was so much detail, and we're used to seeing like crappy, half-assed like Spider-Man TV shows that were terrible.
Or like the old Spider-Man cartoons from 1967. I realized I was doing all the animation in-betweens in my head when I went back and finally saw them a couple years ago. I'm like, this is it's like a slideshow. It's terrible.
Yeah, it's terrible.
Wow.
Oh, really? It was.
Wow.
And I cast Magic Missile. So let's talk a little bit about PAX. You've gotten to see some games. Obviously, Nicole, let's hear from you. Is there a certain game that you've gotten to cover here that sort of stood out to you?
I've covered several games so far. I covered the 3DS, Fear 3, saw Portal 2.
Okay, let's talk about the 3DS. I also want to hear some of the crowd reaction because we've been seeing this press-wise. I may have said some things on feedback before about the stellar launch lineup for the 3DS. I mean, outside of both your impression of it and also getting to see kind of the average consumer getting their hands on it, I mean, do you think there's a large interest, a modest interest?
I think there's a lot of interest in seeing what it can do because it's not something that you can experience unless it's in front of you. Because, you can't convey the 3D over, the screen. So a lot of people definitely are lining up to see it. But there hasn't been a whole lot of, I can't wait to get this, if you know what I mean. I think when I was walking around the floor, I saw that, Nintendo Dogs and Cats didn't have the very long line to go see it.
Well, you kind of know what you're getting.
That's a launch title, though.
It's in the title. Dogs and cats.
Like, and that's it, though. There's no plot to that. And I feel like a lot of the 3DS games are... They're going to look great, but they're not games that you essentially don't have on your DS.
Did they have Zelda here?
They had Zelda here.
Did you see it?
I saw it, and I mean, it's not a launch title, so
True.
Maybe
comes out the first day of E3. Thank you very much, Nintendo, for that one.
I might be busy that week, so no. I think the technology is interesting, but I don't see a whole lot of interest for a commitment of purchase.
How many people are planning on getting one out here in the audience?
On day one.
Yeah.
Yeah, day one.
Yeah.
$250, guys.
Where are launch people? All right.
I mean,
are you getting the submarine game? Because I can't decide.
Steel Diver? Anyone?
Steel
Diver.
Just
Steel
one.
Diver. All right. 2. Oh, million seller in the
Street
works.
Fighter
here.
is the only real
Street
reason I
Fighter
see
4
to
is
buy
good,
it right
but
now.
it's the same game that's on the console, essentially. So,
Yeah,
Rayman.
Who said Rayman?
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah. We need more game characters without joints. There's a distinct lack of that. Ken, you need to address this. Wait, okay, I was going to ask you, though, with the 3DS, we've been talking about it a lot, and there seems to be at times in the industry where there's great tech, but there hasn't been a discussion with the creative minds about what they would want to do with it and if it's going to work. I mean, is that through your years? Have you seen that kind of ebb and flow in the industry?
Well, I think at the end of the day, technology is a tool, and the danger is, and there's definitely, I think especially when a platform holder comes out with a platform, they want people to support it. And from where we're sitting, a lot of people come to us and say, well, you're going to support 3D, you're going to support this, you're going to support that. And for me, it's about having an idea that is going to be meaningful. And, that's with any technology. Like, with multiplayer on BioShock 1, we didn't do it because we just didn't have an idea that we thought was compelling. And I think with any aspect of technology or any particular kind of thing, it's not, if you start trying to check a box, it can become very, very challenging. But then sometimes somebody comes along and they really figure out, they make something that's good. And sometimes it happens early in the development cycle, like, Wii Sports. Like you play that bowling game, and that's like exactly what that technology should be doing. I think they had some challenges, getting past that. And there are some amazing games on that platform, but I don't know if anything hit that sweet spot exactly the way that first game did.
No, golf on Wii Sports.
Yeah.
I still play it.
Yep.
And at least one good thing is I have not tried real golf thinking that, I can do it now. Which Matt, is there something that you've seen that stood out to you?
I saw a good number of things. There was Old Republic, which, I can't wait for Old Republic.
Except that's all we're doing.
Except that's all we've been doing. Yeah, maybe by Christmas. I don't know.
This year.
We've seen it so many times. The next time I want to see it is on my PC in my living room. Like I don't want to wait anymore.
When's it coming out? Do they say yet?
Sometime this year.
At DICE.
2011.
At the DICE keynote, Dr. Greg said 2011, but that's all
we
know.
I think the Old Republic is now tied with Gran Turismo 4 for most number of interviews I've done on a game without it.
Yeah, we're gonna have
out.
to do we'll have to do a montage of all the Old Republic interviews we've done to see you age over the time. But I think the thing I saw that I hadn't seen before that I liked the most was it's an independent game called Skullgirls. It's a 2D fighter. Some people know. Some people know, and it's like kind of in the Marvel vs. Capcom 2 vein. They've been working on it for like 6 years, but they've only really kind of geared up into kind of professional level for the last year and a half or so. But it looks great. The animation is, the animation's like Capcom 2D quality, I would say, and the mechanics are there. So
is it for XBLA or?
Yeah, XBLA and PSN sometime this year. So keep an eye out. Skullgirls.
It's an all-female normally, or is it GURLS?
No, it's normal.
That's
but it's all it's like an
as
all
normal as Skullgirls are.
Kevin, anything you've seen?
I actually this morning just saw one of the new cases they're showing for LA Noire, which I'm so excited about because it's not an MMO, it's not a shooter, it's something different. The motion scan technology is pretty amazing. It's uncanny how realistic these performances are in the game. But what I'm really surprised at is all the AAA titles I'm seeing where I'm just like, okay, I'm not unimpressed, but I'm not blown away. I'm just kind of like, all right, I see what it is. But then I see all these indie developers that are doing really exciting things, and there's some really fun games on the floor, like Orcs Must Die. We saw that yesterday. It's a great, fun tower defense game that puts a twist on the genre. The guys that left Bungie and formed their own company called Moonshot Games have a game called Fallen Frontier, which is really fun. You guys definitely check it out. It's on the back row of the floor. You think these guys would leave this big company, Bungie, and go and reinvent Halo, but they've done this 2D sci-fi scrolling shooter, and it's awesome. It's a lot of fun. Bastion has a good presence on the floor. I saw them, and
Bastion is such an awesome concept.
It's beautiful.
we talked about that at the last.
Just for those who don't know, what's Bastion all about?
It's like a 3/4 sort of dungeon crawl, a little bit almost like Disgaea looking a little bit, but the gimmick is that basically someone who sounds a lot like Ron Perlman and may be Ron Perlman, I don't know, narrates what you do.
Actually, I tried to talk to the guy. He's a friend of the developers. So he grew up with one of them, and he's got this great voice. I'm like, who's this actor? Can I hire him? And he's like, yeah, here he is, our buddy. The guy's like, hey, what's up?
So that's an exclusive Ron Perlman, not in Bastion right there. So I'm
And,
kind of sad about that fact.
And it's just he narrates what you do, and he's just like he slashed the orc and then moved on to talk to the man up the road. And I'm like, I don't know if this is going to get annoying or not, but right now it's kind of awesome.
And you occasionally see him in the game.
Yeah,
he's
a character in the game,
yeah.
and like he's narrating while you're talking to him,
cool.
and you're
That's
like,
cool. Well, it's kind of like the narrator in Kirby's Epic Yarn, which I still think is some of the best narration, where it's like, and he went to the land of fluff. And it's just like, wow, this is really silly. Ken, was there anything that you saw that you aren't making?
I just saw Bastion and a guy named Greg Kasavin who used to be the
yes, Greg Kasavin of GameSpot.
He was at 2K for a while. He's writing the script for that, and I think there are some really good ideas in there. It's looks like this guy a little bit, but it's all 3D. Like the character assets are 3D.
Like the world kind of builds itself while you run along. It's really impressive.
And I think that narration system is really smart. And I'm always, as a guy who I didn't work on System Shock 1, but I fell in love with what they did, and obviously because I've been copying it ever since. But I love great uses of audio, and the narrator is a great use of audio, so I was really impressed with that. I haven't seen LA Noire. I've heard really good things. I saw Orcs Must Die is actually one of our co-founders works at Robot. Ralph Vermier, one of the co-founders of Irrational, so I'm really excited for that. And they're a great group of guys. I went by Old Republic. Looks good. I was mostly spending time in board games actually because there's just so cool. There's so many great board games here, and
the tabletop gaming section is really awesome here.
Yeah,
you can go rent whatever you want and just go play it. And it's great.
Do they have that water irrigation game I found at Gen Con all those years ago?
You mean the one with the guy looking suggestively at the donkey?
Yeah. Really?
That wasn't a game, Adam.
And I looked at the guy and I was like, really? You made a board game about water irrigation, and it's like you have to pay off government officials. And I was like, wow. I was like, I'm happy to have met the one guy who ever made a water irrigation game. He goes, no, there's another guy right over there who has one too. And I'm like, this is a weird subgenre. It's emerging.
I mean, Euro games, like those kind of games, like their themes are really weird, but that's the normal standard. That's not like the exception. Right. It's like this is a game about trading different colored beans, and that's what Eurogames are, and that's really cool. It's not. I'm much more of a I want little miniatures or Nazis and tanks I can knock over, but that's a really super popular kind of game, and it doesn't really need to be particularly non-abstract. It can be super abstract.
Really, I think all we want is those tables that the bad guys had in Bond movies, where it's the map of the world, and they have that little broom thing, and they're moving them. It's just once I get to do that, I'm like, okay, I'm at peace. I'm done with board games.
That's a reality now. That Geek Chic, if you haven't seen their booth on the floor, are these beautiful, extremely expensive tables that are awesome.
I was looking at those, thinking about what would happen if I got that, and pretty much how quickly my wife would probably divorce me if I brought that home.
You crossed the line, sister.
I've been trying to come up with a reason we would need one of those for a shoot or something, and then be like, well, it's too big to ship back to you.
We broke down the box. One game that I saw, we were just chatting about, Skulls of the Shogun. It's right there next to Orcs Must Die. It's really clever because it's it tricks you into playing a turn-based strategy game by making it look like it's not a turn-based strategy game. And it doesn't have the grid, but it's still based upon concepts of the grid. And I think with some of the other games we've been talking about is these smaller downloadable games seem to be an interesting space to kind of work out certain gameplay issues that are almost too risky to try to take on or experiment with in a big budget game. And that, hey, turn-based strategy is good. We just can't really rely upon playing it as we have. If it's not Civ, it just feels a little antiquated. But there's some really nice approaches, like having fighting games to play with fighting game mechanics.
Yeah, and speaking of that, I think one of the things I've been impressed with, and I didn't expect to be, is Nexon. Yeah. And they've got Dragon Nest here, and they're also still showing Vindictus, which is already live to the public. But the fact that those games look and play the way they do, but they're free, is amazing to me. Because Vindictus is a pretty damn good beat 'em up. Even aside from the RPG elements, and I really like what they're doing there. The free-to-play model seems to be opening up a really high-level production.
Well, we saw Firefall which looks gorgeous, and for a free-to-play sci-fi game, it looks incredible. And It's amazing.
I assume you guys feel the same way. When you hear free to play, it sounds like you're kind of getting like an off-brand soda that probably has chemicals in it that you shouldn't be drinking. But no, I think it's finally getting rid of that kind of stigma that there's, hold on, what's under the hood? This is going to trick me. It's going to,
don't think of it as Mountain Mist. Think of it as Mellow Yellow.
Yeah.
It's better.
Or Cactus Cooler. Oh, man, that was
But social games still have that stigma. We kind of append that in the game industry, like at the level we work at. When you talk about social games, there's always kind of that's a social game. But everywhere you go, to every conference, that's what people talk about, especially when we were at DICE just recently. It dominated the whole conversation. Mm-hmm. And it's weird because we still don't know what to make of social games.
Yes, Brian Reynolds, who obviously has made so many different real-time strategy games, that man now walks into a room and everyone's like, doesn't know what to make of him. It's like you might be the most powerful man in the game industry, but we don't know if it's good or bad. I mean, Ken, what's your feeling on the rise of social games? And the big discussion is, do they qualify as games? Or are they something else?
Well, I'm definitely I think there's a lot of people who feel games have to be one thing or another thing, and honestly, I'm a bit of a slut, when it comes to games. I'll play. I spent a lot of money on Brian's game, on Frontierville, mostly because the reason I played it is because Brian's probably the best strategy game, maybe besides Sid, the best strategy game designer who ever lived.
Rise of Nations, I think, is one of the most tragically overlooked games out
absolutely.
there.
Yeah. And then Civ 2 and Alpha Centauri, he's just incredibly talented. Though I it's hard as a gamer, it's hard to lose him from hardcore games. Look, I think that he's if guys like that go into that space is going to get better. Yeah. I'm lucky. I get to play with Sid Meier's Facebook game, the Civilization game that he's working on, and there's really cool stuff there. And I think having really guys like that go into that space, because look, it's not like we were born to do one kind of game or another. We were born to work on design challenges, and there's different kinds of design challenges. I think that my goal is that people are going to figure out how to monetize more core ideas, and that's just going to, because there was a time where basically if you want to play a turn-based strategy game, well, guess what? Too bad, because there was no financial way to do it. But I've been playing like Memoir 44, which is an adaptation of a board game, which is a freemium game that is this adaptation of this nerdy turn-based World War II miniatures game that you can play on your computer against friends or the AI. That game would never exist if this business model didn't exist. So I'm happy to do that. But I think the downside is going to be that making a big $60 console game, there's going to be fewer and fewer people who can do that. Mm-hmm. And you're going to, and I think, Cliff was talking about this Cliff Blazinski was talking about this at GDC. This isn't new, I don't think, but, these sort of middle-of-the-road games, I don't mean quality, I mean in terms of budget and scale, are they're getting very difficult to make.
There's no B games. I mean, it's like,
not many.
Back when we used to have, made fun of some games on X-Play because there were these games that were kind of out there to be made fun of, and they don't exist anymore. I mean, they might be on the Wii, but they usually are like, Well,
let's not forget,
they usually have an exercise game that's like, Wii Fitless or something.
We still got Dynasty Warriors 7 is coming.
That's true.
That's about it. Like it's getting to the point where Koei's like the last bastion.
We Dare. We had a lot of fun with We Dare.
Dynasty Warrior. I've never seen it in all my years.
Somebody must have at some point.
You've never seen a Lubu?
Crying right
Yeah.
He didn't recognize my costume.
Look, it's me. No, I'm playing Cal P. I only remember that because his name was Cal P, and that was awesome. So you got to see Duke Nukem. Had you seen it yet?
Yeah,
I was out in Vegas.
Yeah, we saw it. We saw it in Vegas, and we heard there was maybe going to be something new, brand new here, and that didn't happen, and we were kind of crestfallen when that didn't occur. But if you guys haven't checked the game out, they have a really cool booth set up with chandeliers and barely dressed girls and a throne you can pose on, and somebody's clapping for barely dressed girls. That's great.
Yay, we need more of them.
And in freezing Boston, that's exactly what you need. But if you haven't played the game, I think when we played it at our preview events back before DICE started, it was like you can't believe you're playing the game, first of all, because it's actually coming out. But then it feels like an older game because it's been under development since the dawn of time, and so it was sort of a weird space to be in, but
it's a little refreshing, though, isn't it?
It's refreshing, and it's a throwback, and a refreshing throwback.
People don't make games like that anymore. I mean, shooters were different 13 years ago, I would have to say. Like, you would run around with a shotgun.
Yeah.
Like, you don't do that. You sit down and you hide behind something with a shotgun now.
Yeah, I mean, obviously but if you think about it, and I think this is something that's always a challenge when you do something that's innovative. And if you go back to Duke Nukem, it was incredibly innovative. The environmental interaction in Duke Nukem was unparalleled. It was like all this cool stuff. The pool table and
I can pick up poop.
You can pick up poop. You can do that in the game as well. And so to some degree, all that interaction, you're like, oh, I've seen that before. But you saw it before in Duke Nukem. But so the thing is that what do you do? And I'm not talking about Duke in particular, but if you have a franchise that is known for certain things, and then a lot of people have taken ideas from that thing and expanded upon that, or just copied it, then when you do it again, you have a challenge because people have seen it already.
Yeah.
And but I think they're not really in a spot where they can be like, oh, we're BioShock Infinite, we're going to reinvent the thing, because what people want is another Duke game. They want a very much Duke Nukem game. But look, I mean, Randy and his team are really, really talented. I don't think they've ever made any game that wasn't at least excellent, if not amazingly great.
I was so worried you were about to say Metacritic scores. I'm like, I can't. No.
just in terms of quality. You go back to their Half-Life expansions to Borderlands. I mean, they're a great company, and I have a lot of faith in them.
No. I'm excited for that too. Let's move on to this interesting discussion because we do have you here. The industry seems to be changing significantly, and not even just so much what's happening with the games. I mean, there was the stuff surrounding Infinity Ward, but then, EA Partners is making these interesting deals where people are owning their IP. There seems to be a new way that we're valuing the creatives in the industry. For someone who is one of those creative minds in this industry, I mean, are you sensing something happening out there?
Well, the games industry is really different like the movie industry, because we tend to like the movie industry, you're constantly working with different people, and I don't just mean different studios, but you're also working with different, you do a movie for 3 months, then you break up, you have a team, and you form a new team. And so they have this sort of cross-pollination. They also are they're co-located in the same spot. So where in the games industry, we're much more spread out, we tend to not work together as much. Like I know, like Todd Howard, I know Cliff, but I never worked with them. We're like in a film, like they'd be like, oh yeah, let's do a movie together, and then you do a movie together for 3 months, and then you.
For you to be, hey, let's work incredibly hard for the next 3 years together, and never see our family.
And that's just not practical. Sort of how we work. So. It's a really different space. I've now completely forgotten the question.
But what we were just talking about was fascinating. Yes. I mean, do you think that though that we're entering a new era in terms of how the game industry is run as a business? I mean, as you were saying earlier, the budgets on games are very, very high, and actually, speaking of LA Noire, it's like, hey, let's do LA in the 1940s, and then BioShock Infinite, it's like, let's do America in 1910 because everyone's familiar with that time period. I mean, those are two of the more risky ventures. I'm not seeing a ton of other stuff that's also following in suit, and I think there's timidity on the part of some of the publishers.
But wouldn't you be if you were them? These games are expensive, and I think that I still don't understand why somebody gave us money to make BioShock. I mean, it's weird,
Did you call them back up and be like, just so you know, we're all clear, it's an underwater city with an Ayn Rand type running it, right?
The kids love objectivism. Rock and roll and objectivism. I was like I remember, when we sold the thing, I was on the phone, I'm like, I can't believe they bought this thing, because it is pretty weird, right? But on the other hand, and the same look at Red Dead, it was a Western, and, a couple years ago, if you asked me, were one of the biggest movies of the year and the biggest game of the year going to be Westerns, you probably would have laughed at them, and, then you have True Grit and Red Dead. And I think that you don't succeed unless you take risks, but taking risks is, not surprisingly, risky. And, but you have to, you really have to go into things. Like when we go into a game like Infinite or BioShock 1, I have this ability, which is probably dangerous, which is to just go, no, this is going to work. And that's when I started a company, and that's when I made these games, because the odds of it not working are so high in any endeavor that you kind of have to just shut that voice off and trust yourself. But then you also have to be open for the course correction voice, within that. And look, I don't envy the guys who have to choose which checks to sign because, how do you choose? How do you sign off on a BioShock? How do you sign off on a Red Dead? How do you sign off on an LA Noire? You just have to have faith in the creative people around you. And then you have to know when to say no, I guess. But I don't think I could do that job.
No, I mean, Matt, do you think, I think we talked about that with Red Dead, but if you look at some of, like BioShock, I always do the pitch meeting in my head, and I'm like, how did that happen?
BioShock is one of the best examples of playing a game and the whole time thinking, I can't believe this exists. Like, it's the themes and the fact that I had to, start looking up, bits of the Fountainhead and because I didn't remember it from college and I was doing research to keep up with the game's story and themes and I was like, who's gonna get this? And it doesn't really matter, I guess, because the game still pulls you in narratively even if you don't get all those extra references, but there's such a depth to the character and the world of BioShock that as a part of me this is kind of that didn't really need to be there for this to be a hit, but maybe it did, and it's hard to predict that someone's going to be able to make that and put that in a game.
Yeah, and it gets easier. When we pitched Infinite to the company, we were like, okay, that weird thing that ended up making some money for you. Well, we're throwing all that out, and we're doing this, as you said, now we're going to talk about 1912 because everybody loves 1912. But if you don't,
kids love McKinley.
They love McKinley. They love McKinley.
It's going to be airships and bunting everywhere. It'll be great.
But I think it was certainly easier to sell Infinite to the company than BioShock 1, but it's still weird and strange and risky.
I'm just hoping that maybe you'll do a game that's based on works of literature that are a lot shorter than the works of Ayn Rand, like Raymond Carver.
Yeah. How many people got that in the audience? Anybody? No, I didn't even get that reference. So nice.
Carver.
No.
What do you talk about when you talk about love? The greatest short story writer. Okay. We'll chat with him afterwards.
But what about the other streamlining of the industry that Activision recently did when they totally slimmed down? They're like, we're focusing on Call of Duty. We're getting rid of Guitar Hero. We're going with our big money maker. We're going to kind of stop innovating. Whereas EA, on the other hand, is like, we're going to do all these smaller titles. And you saw Double Fine go from making Brutal Legend, which didn't do so well, but now they're doing all these small titles like Costume Quest and Trenched is coming up and Stack just came out.
And it's Sesame Street game.
Sesame Street Connect game. I'm glad he's excited. But could you ever envision Irrational shifting gears and going towards small downloadable titles?
Essentially where we started, our first game was made for, by System Shock 2, I think we got paid $600,000 for, and we made it in 13 months.
Sorry, when you consider budgets these days, that's just phenomenal.
It's nothing. It's nothing. So I have that experience. I've done that. I don't know. Right now, that's not the space I'm at, and it may one day I could do that. Certainly, again, I've done it before. But I like having a lot of time because, we throw so much out at Irrational that I think that, and that's currently how we get to quality. Is basically we make stuff and it's terrible. We make another thing and it's terrible. We make it's terrible, and then we throw it out. And we're like, okay, well, that's good. And then we'll keep that. And we have the luxury to do that. Where if you're working on a much smaller project, you kind of have to get it, right at the beginning. And so you have to you have to cut down your risk to some degree to do that because you can't make mistakes. So we're fortunate that we can make a lot of mistakes before we show anybody anything.
What do you think, in, say 2 years down the line in a world where there's probably been more games like Angry Birds, which I think was pronounced the most profitable game of all time, what is going to be the incentive for a publisher to finance a BioShock over some little $200,000 game that might make $70 million?
Called Pissy Birds or something like that.
Well, I think the incentive for any smart business person is it's the same incentive. It's what's the return on investment? And if you go to the App Store, I think the average revenue, and revenue just means the money coming in, not profit, is $4,000 or something. So there's plenty of people. Angry Birds is there's a few games that are rare phenomena. And like every other industry, there's a lot of chaff out there too, and even some really good games that just don't get noticed. So a thing like Angry Birds is lightning in a bottle, but it's the same process. You have some creative people with a really good idea, and you can throw. There's just with those games, you throw a lot more spaghetti against the wall than you can with these big games. So the big games are going to be the way you'll manage the spaghetti risk is you work with people who they'll tend to not take risks on people who haven't done it before, and that will be unfortunately that will be a limiting factor for people. Like, you know, I was lucky; I got my chance to make the big game before I had a big hit, but I don't know how many people are going to get that chance, and that's the bad thing. Is that you're not going to have a lot of people. A BioShock right now would have a lot harder time getting greenlit than it would even a few years ago.
Yeah. Hey, guys, the show's called Feedback, so we're going to go to that feedback part. So we're going to start taking questions from the audience. I'm assuming you probably were told, do we want them to line up by that microphone there?
Yes, we have. I think there's microphones in both aisles. Am I right? Or is there just... Oh, there's two. Okay,
there.
Line up in an orderly
fashion. Feel free
to
ask anything. Like, how many hours did I spend playing Dragon Age 2 for that review? And did it drive me crazy?
And did you read it? You should go read it.
Hi. Now, I have an idea, kind of like BioShock, using George Orwell, Orwellian video game, using Myst and warping into like 1984 and that sort of stuff, post-apocalyptic and that sort of stuff. So, you doing BioShock and the kind of classical 50s style, would that genre work in a kind of way?
Well, like Orwell, like taking some elements kind of like Orwell.
Animal Farm, 1984, that sort of stuff.
I think I've already stolen plenty from George Orwell. Like I think I've crossed that bridge already.
It's not like he minds.
You've become a CIA plant yourself.
No, I mean Orwell is the great political writer of the 20th century, and if you're not stealing from him, you know.
If you're not learning to write from him.
Yeah.
The young lady right there.
Hey, Adam. Do you know when Kingdom Hearts 3 is coming out?
See? I knew it. Okay, I'm curious. If you come to a feedback panel...
Say hello.
Yeah, say hello to Abby, everyone.
It's Abby Happy.
You didn't know she's now the community manager at Respawn. So, how many of you want Kingdom Hearts 3?
Yeah.
Really?
Look at that. More people than want the 3DS. There's more people that want Kingdom Hearts 3.
I have to work even harder to alienate you for the next year. So,
do the people who want Kingdom Hearts 3, are you going to buy the 3DS for that Kingdom Hearts 3D game? If it doesn't just say 3 at the end of it, it doesn't count, huh? All right.
Burn Nintendo.
They need to finish Versus 13 and get on with that.
All right, next.
This question is for the Cessinator.
Nice.
I like that one.
Next level Dungeon Master. My question is do you eat Chuck Norris's boots for breakfast?
No. I used to eat my own boots for breakfast. That's very kind that you think I would have any affiliation with Chuck Norris, but he's kind of scary.
He is. Thank you.
Adam's being modest because there's a billboard in L.A. and Adam's naked on it, posing with a pair of gunners on and nothing else. And
you haven't seen it?
He had to get in
I'll
good
sign you a
shape for that.
I want that.
It says it's the new definition of casual gaming.
Wow.
Yes.
Hi there. You guys mentioned earlier the Activision model of, focusing in on one IP and sort of cranking out a lot of games in a couple year span. Do you think that that's healthy for the market or for the future of video gaming? Are we sort of running franchises into the ground a la Guitar Hero?
I personally see it as a short-term fix. Obviously, I would love to hear some of your insight.
Look, honestly, as a creative, I obviously don't like it, right? I've not seen the spreadsheet, which is like burn through the franchise, get the maximum value out of it, and throw it out the window versus nurturing a franchise. Obviously, I'm lucky at the company I work at, that's not the approach they take. I can't tell you mathematically which is the right, just from a number standpoint, which is the right approach. I can tell you creatively, it's not, I wouldn't want to work there.
Well, it's also a model that is now replicated in other forms of entertainment. I mean, Mariah Carey doesn't put an album out every year. I don't think that would, she shouldn't put albums out at all, actually. But also, put on a jacket, lady.
But that's exactly what they did. You don't work for Activision, right? You're not looking for business.
No, I did work for Harmonix,
because they did that with Guitar Hero. They ran it into the ground. That's why people stopped buying it, and they're going to do it with Call of Duty. At least that sounds like that's their game plan. I mean, it is the most successful franchise in history, but it's people are going to get tired. You get tired of overexposure of anything. If you had pizza for lunch every day, you're going to get sick of it by like the end of the week.
Yeah. And then you got to wonder, what if that does burn out And then if you have a reputation for that's how you approach your franchises, where are you going to get the creative people to create your next franchise to exploit?
That's the biggest problem is that people who build that stuff are going to be we by nature are not a fan of that model. Are you going to get the people to build the new intellectual property once you burn out that intellectual property?
Yeah. Thank you for the question.
Thanks.
Okay, so Mr. Sessler, you are well known for making obscure references, so much so that you get your own counter on the show.
Right.
And everybody has that one game that they love, but none of their friends have ever heard of. So my question to the panel is this: what are your favorite obscure games?
He's good.
That is good. Can you mail us that question as well?
Favorite, Nicole, want to go first?
Nope.
I can already tell you Matt Kyle is going to win this competition.
I got a few. Well, I don't know. What am I? Right now I'm playing East Chronicles on the PSP, which I'm sure a lot of people in here have heard of. But yes, and I'm playing that because I can't play Oath and Felghana because that's the third one, and I have to play the first two.
Oh wait, tell them about the game we just got at work while we were here. It's waiting on our desk. You're going to play it. It's a
what was that? Hyperdimension Neptunia or whatever that. Yeah. Okay, this guy must play all the same stuff I do, I guess. Into the obscure Japanese turn-based crap. And probably right now I found it on the Virtual Console, and my quarterly exploration of the Wii is Black Tiger, which is an old Capcom arcade side-scroller that I used to borrow and beg and steal quarters from my parents to play at the old arcade. No, you're like this knight kind of guy, and you've got a whip on a chain, and you shoot daggers and you collect Zenny coins, every Capcom game at the time.
Actually, once again, it's another thing I love about the industry now. Is that sites like Good Old Games, where it's oh wow, I remember that. So there's two games that I keep on going back to. Both of them are pretty obscure. The first one is Shogo from Monolith, because I still can't figure out why we can't get one more first-person giant mech game, because it's like dragons and peanut butter. It goes well together.
Yes. Well, and for some reason, every time I see Shogun 2, Total War, I read it as Shogo 2, and I'm like, Shogo 2? Oh. Fuck.
I mean, granted, I would like the version with the AI this time, but it's...
What's the other obscure game?
The other one, I talk about this one a lot, but it was a game called Kingpin that came out in 99. Zaytrix, it was their one game. It was Interplay. It was the most amazing use of the Quake 2 engine. It was just incredible.
Horribly violent.
Yeah. Also, so foul-mouthed, so violent. Unfortunately, that game came out within weeks of Columbine, and so it kind of got... It got buried.
Wasn't it that week, the episode with the review you cut of it was supposed to air?
We forgot it was airing, and we actually had to kind of run and pull that show off the air, because we were able to do things on Tech TV in those days that after Columbine we could never, ever do again, which was kind of be insanely violent. So
I mean the old you can't show someone in a crosshairs rule.
After that, unfortunately, our rule is we couldn't shoot people in games, and so that's why we never had a television review of Grand Theft Auto 3, because it was just impossible.
Mm-hmm. And that's why if you watch old Tech TV era first-person shooter reviews, we suck, because we're intentionally missing all the time.
I've been playing. Thank God for emulators, because I used to play on my Apple IIc a lot of old games. And there's this game called Alternate Reality. Has anyone ever played this game? The City. They were going to have a whole set of games, I think, and eventually they didn't all come out. But you're in a spaceship, and there's a force field in front of you, and as you step through it, it sets your stats at the top of the screen, and then you're in a Dungeons and Dragons world, and you're playing as an adventurer. And it was very bizarre. It was alternate reality, and you would go into the pubs, and the guys would sing songs, and it was very cool. I still remember the songs and everything, and it's a great game, and I sound like a huge dork.
That sounds awesome. I can't believe I never heard of that.
It's a great game.
Ken, is there anything?
Yeah, I mean, one's, I have two also. One is not very, I don't think that really qualifies as obscure, but will always be on my hard drive, which is Master of Magic, and, in its 320 by 200 glory. And then there's a great game called Cultcept, which is...
Saga, yeah.
Which I'm waiting, I heard there was a DS version, which I would kill for, but I think it's only in Japanese. It's not a game that, if you don't speak Japanese, that is going to work on the DS. But I love that game, and I wish there was.
I have a huge relationship with that game. It has nothing to do with me playing it. It's doing VOs where you have to say that word enough times becomes so challenging. When we were like cold sept. And also I think the X-Play book that we put out, the book naturally opened to that review.
Yes. Well, Nicole, have you had time to think about it?
Yeah.
Oh, my turn? I'm not really playing anything obscure. I just got a Goemon's Castle for the N64. I just bought that.
That's pretty obscure.
That's pretty
I
obscure.
don't know, is it? I feel like everyone liked that game. No one?
I don't really even...
Whenever I talk about it, everyone's so encouraging to me. They're like, oh, good for you. And so I just figured...
Maybe because you've so
too.
blown their mind, they're like, good for you. You might have problems.
Oh.
See a friend.
But then you have an addiction to a certain series that you're now playing.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, no, I'm playing Pokemon Black right now, and that's a problem. Yeah.
How about the Pokemon White guys? No, underrepresented. Just black's cool. Okay, let's go to our next question. Thank you so much for that round-robin question. You made our editorial wherever Eric went. I know he's happy with that one. Yes.
Hey, what have you guys seen here this weekend that's been kind of a surprise for you? Like, I walked by, and I know it's already been announced, but I saw Child of Eden, and it just like, holy crap, this was kind of off my radar.
Child of Eden looks really good when you,
It does.
Granted, after a long day, it's a tough one for me to stare at.
We played that in Japan, and it's very trippy, and there's going to be a lot of altered chemicals helping that. Here's something that surprised me the most. Years ago, I think it was 2008 or 2009, Fantasy Flight Games announced Gears of War, the board game. And I was like, wow, how are they going to do that? But that sounds kind of cool. Their Battlestar Galactica game is awesome. So I was like, great. And then we never heard anything about it. I emailed them, called them. So I go by their booth today, and they have a big banner, Gears of War, the board game. And I'm like, oh, my God, you guys have it. And they're like, no, we don't have it. We just want to let people know it's still coming out. And they literally couldn't tell me anything about the game. So
it was kind of like Candyland, and you just kind of put the card and say, oh, I get to go to...
Marcus Phoenix goes down Gumdrop Falls.
Well, I hope it's 3D and it has a series of small walls.
Candy walls.
I'm trying to think of anything... I managed to actually get to see everything right before we got to PAX because GDC had said so many games, so nothing surprised me so much here. I think I'm still a little taken aback with Battlefield 3. It was just so impressive. And yes, one of the best things you should ever do if you want to impress the press is put them on a floor that has 50 subwoofers underneath it when you do the demo. Yes, exactly.
Take notes for the next Bioshock Infinite reveal. We got some big rumbling bass.
Adam likes vibration in his buttocks.
Exactly. I'm sitting down, spreading out. Oh,
there's an image.
Why is everyone looking at me?
There's
funny?
an image.
Matt, anything surprise you?
I don't know if anything surprised me in the video game front, although Orcs Must Die looks a lot cooler than I expected something called Orcs Must Die to look.
I think more games should be an imperative. Like that's what the title should be.
That's right. Well, we've kicked that around for a while to do a top 5 X list of game titles that could also be commands. I don't remember.
Just Dance.
Just Dance. Like, just things. It could be orders, but I really liked Orcs. Like what Orcs Must Die looks like. It's kind of in the same trenched vibe of like that. They call it action strategy. We're not calling it tower defense.
So much better than tower. Because when you think of tower defense, you think of like field runners. And
but I was
so much more you can do.
Yeah, but I was glad to see when we walked through the tabletop gaming area. I saw a couple people playing a game called Yomi, which is a card game version, basically a 2D fighter. Like a Street Fighter style game made by a Street Fighter professional player called David Serlin. And it's pretty obscure right now, but like there was some people actually playing it. It's a great game, and I was glad to see that it's gotten out there.
And Nicole?
I think most of the things I've seen already, and there's not a whole lot of new here, but I was really impressed with Fear 3's multiplayer. They kind of decided to not do the typical multiplayer approach, and they're kind of trying to do modes that are, even though the multiplayer doesn't connect to the story, it's still going to make you feel like you're playing a Fear game.
Yeah. Well, it's also it's that sense of kind of, was it the Wall of Pain or Death?
Yeah, Wall of Death or something. Yeah.
It's constantly forcing the players to kind of advance and move forward. Thank you so much for the question. Let's go on to another. Next, you.
So, being that this year has been the year of new engines, Crytek, idTech, we have Unreal new engines. Are we seeing this as the year that maybe PC gaming is going to come to the forefront with all this hardware having to push the next gen graphics and maybe push another console refresh, which has been, in the news. Xbox is hiring more, engineers to develop those consoles.
I'm really hoping it doesn't mean there's another console coming. I can't. I don't think I have the heart to do it one more time.
I wouldn't worry. I don't think that's happening anytime. And I don't have any inside knowledge. My gut tells me there's no incentive for that to happen anytime soon. I'm really happy about that. But I don't think it's happening.
Now, with these new engines, as the gentleman pointed out, I mean, are these more like trying to sort of optimize the hardware that already exists? I mean, with stuff like Crytek stuff.
Yeah, look. I mean, the thing with a console, for instance, is that the thing doesn't get any better over time. It's just you get better at using it. You know, and it's just knowledge of how to use it. Where the PC platform obviously is constantly evolving. So yeah, I mean, it's just people getting. Either smart people coming in and learning from their mistakes and optimizing, and having more time because you could optimize, you can make things run fast. The faster you can make something run, the better you can make it look, and you can keep optimizing and optimizing. It's a question of time. So as you have years go by and you do multiple projects, you
kind of know what you're doing. All right, I think we got time for one last question. It is you, no pressure.
All right, first, I'd like to thank Feedback for introducing me to Deadly Premonition.
Yeah,
it was life-changing.
You just made Abby really happy.
And my question is, we saw 2 new handhelds being announced this year, being the PSP2, I think that's what it's called.
No, the NGP. Remember, it sounds like a hip-hop collective from the mid-'90s. How about the NGP? And then Michael Bivins is on the toilet rapping.
We have the 3DS too, but do you think developers will lean to these platforms, or will they stick with the new trend, which is Android and iOS?
I think it's a very good question, and it's yet to be seen. I mean, even the 3DS seems to be slightly positioned that it can function outside of just the games. And if Nintendo's looking to go in that direction, I think that they're also... Nintendo sees the writing on the wall, I think, slower than most other companies. So if they're finally seeing that, that's...
Yeah, I think so. They definitely have the... and was it Iwata that said, that the iPhone is their competitor in his view? I think... It's going to be intense, and I'm wondering, my big question mark is the NGP, because there's some cool stuff being shown on that one, and I'm kind of sitting here hoping it doesn't get pushed by the wayside, kind of, because the people sort of forget the PSP sometimes.
The what?
Yeah. And you want to see proof of that, go try to find the PSP section at a Toys R Us.
Yeah, but they've sold 60 million of the thing.
Yeah. But it doesn't get credit for it, really, because the DS is a much bigger bar on the graph, But it's going to be a war. It's going to be a knockdown, drag-out war in the handheld portable market, I think.
And I mean, I think there's some interesting things because the market that was young, that was really into the DS, they might be getting older. And there is something sexier about a Sony product. When you tend to be like 12 or 13, you're aspirational. You want to do what you think adults are doing, which actually is playing the DS, but they don't know that. And it's the NGP might really. Hopefully, it's not $600. That's my biggest fear.
I just wanted to point out a couple things before we wrap. If you didn't see Ken's panel and the Irrational Team's panel yesterday, it's up on G4. You can actually watch the entire panel. We have a video of that, courtesy of Frank Meyer. Frank Meyer is our cameraman on Feedback. You may see him all the time in the background. Does a great work. We also have a local Boston crew here filming. This will be up on the web, so you'll be able to watch this on Wednesday. Thank you, guys.
And
Yes, and obviously I'm going to put a quick plug. 12:30 Main Theater will be the X-Play panel. We will actually be shooting an episode of X-Play that will be incorporated into the panel. That's all I know. They refuse to give me any more information because they're trying to scare me.
You're also Adam is signing autographs tomorrow.
Yeah.
Let's not forget Neil as well. We're pointing out people behind
Neil, our editor.
Round of applause. He's the guy who makes those 2 cameras become one thing.
He also films.
I'd like to now thank Nicole, thank Matt, thank Kevin for joining me, and a big special round of applause for Ken Levine. It's always an honor and a pleasure. Good to see you. Thanks to all of you. Keep watching Feedback. It helps me afford hot wings. Good night. Hello there. I'm Adam Sessler, host of X-Play, editor-in-chief at G4TV.com. I talk a lot about video games, and sometimes a camera is in front of me when I'm doing that. We call that Sessler's Soapbox. It takes about 2 minutes of your time, but trust me, you will hear invective and joy and probably a lot of rude things like you've never heard before in the context of video games. I do it for you, so you should check it out. It's up every Tuesday on G4TV.com.
anybody?